from Stephanie, PFEA report.
I'm Stephanie Broadwater. I teach 4th grade at Trustees Elementary and have some happenings that are already going on in our schools just a week into it. The elementary schools are beginning their cross-country programs, as well as Post Falls Middle School. Some practices have been happening inside this week because of the air quality. Prairie View has a few great things happening. They love their new flooring and paint, so they're happy to have the refresh of the school and wanted to pass that on. They are working on putting together an outdoor learning space that they hope you guys can come see when that's finished. They are implementing some role models with the 3rd through 5th grade role models to help with the younger recesses, and that's going well. And they are working on building a sensory room for calming breaks for students. So some exciting things happening in the district. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. That was quick. But we've only been in school for 5 minutes. So there'll be more to report on, no doubt, next month. So I have kind of a long list, and I guess I'll start off with air quality since Stephanie brought it up. We use these 2 protocols with regard to how we handle recess, outdoor activities, all kinds of things. So we actually had an elementary principals meeting this morning, and we are in red right now, which is below 200. And in red, on this sheet, it doesn't talk about recess at all. But on this sheet, it does. And basically what it says is that if you're going out for a short recess, 15 minutes or less, and you don't have asthma or you're not having difficulties, it is okay for you to be outside on recess. And this comes from the Environmental Protection Agency, so we try to use the guidance from the experts. So once we hit purple is when we are not outside at all. Now red is different for extended activities, so think soccer, that kind of thing. If the air quality stays like this, we won't be able to have the soccer games tomorrow. So I just wanted everyone to kind of know that we're not just kind of willy-nilly making a determination with no guidance at all. So I brought these in case you all wanted to see them. The one that's more specific is now posted on our website for our parents. And so hopefully, we did actually have 2 phone calls today about whether or not we cancel school for bad air. And we do not. So I just thought it would be good for all of you to have that information. So
for the children who do have asthma,
they stay inside.
And they're supervised in that? Okay.
Yeah.
And you said in the red, they also have the choice to
They
stay
do
inside.
have the choice to stay inside in the red. And so we kind of, what happened this morning was we had an elementary principals meeting on a different topic. And obviously the air quality is a concern of everyone's right now. And so we were discussing, do we have to have indoor recess? And the answer to that is no, we don't have to have indoor recess. However, we do want to provide options for kids. And so that's where we landed. And those are the documents that helped us get there. So, wanted to follow up with regard to the food service building. That building is slated to begin construction sometime in the future. I don't know when that's going to be because we are having a number of different issues with the site and the length of the truck that needs to be able to get into that site in order to effectively drop off all the food for our child nutrition program. So originally, the architects had designed the area to accommodate a 48-foot truck. It turns out that in order to make the turnaround accessible to a 48-foot truck, we can barely do it in the section of the land that we originally wanted the food service building to sit on, because we were going to eventually, hopefully, develop maintenance and IT out kind of closer to Greens Ferry. Well, the other issue that we have with that site is that in order for a truck to basically come in and be able to back in, Horse Haven is the frontage road, and it currently doesn't go all the way through. So it's not like you can pull off of Cecil, come down Horsehaven, and then back your giant truck up into the garage to unload everything. So the architects have gone back to the drawing board and are talking to the city about whether or not we can access that same site off of Greens Ferry. I don't know that we're gonna be able to do that. The good news is we have not spent any money and we're still waiting for the surveys to come back. So the only money that we've spent is money that we would have to spend on survey and basically soil samples, that kind of thing. So I'm just bringing this to your attention because we have come into a little bit of a snafu, so to speak, in that we have to wait and see whether or not it's feasible that this site will still work for our food distribution center, because we don't want to build something that then doesn't work. So, Neil.
New guy question, where is it gonna be at?
It's right behind Prairie View. So the district, the Prairie View sits on a giant piece of land, and we have the 3 acres that are directly behind Prairie View that are fenced off and adjacent to the high school. So that is where kind of we thought our central hub as the district continues to expand would be. Now the issue is monetarily for the district, we still have enough space that we could put a big turnaround in that and utilize more of the 3 acres. The issue is, once we start developing kind of the Greens Ferry side of that, the west side of that, then the district becomes responsible for maintaining some kind of grass with water, pavement, frontage trees, all the things that the city requires when you're gonna develop more of the property. We were hoping to develop the small section because that's what we can afford to do at this time. So what I would say is stay tuned. I will keep you apprised of what's happening, but we have kind of run into a bit of a problem with regard to the length of a truck that's gonna be able to get in there and the regulations that the city has. So I remember, I think when we talked about this in July, I told you that we'd probably be going out to bid in late August, and here it is mid-September, and we don't even have survey results back. So just keeping you posted that is not moving along as quickly as we wanted to, but again, time isn't our enemy, so maybe it's a good thing, because we definitely wanna make sure that we do it right. So there's that. I have been in contact with 3 different developers on the west side of Post Falls with regard to hopefully acquiring an elementary school site on the west side of town. I can't say I think that the board is aware. I will inform you that we've been working with the core group that's developing the Hutter corridor, and we have been promised 10 acres of land on the east side of town. The Plummer Forest Group originally was going to attempt to donate some land near Ponderosa and the skate park for an elementary school site. They have stopped basically talking about the development for right now, so that is on hold. In the meantime, if you've driven on I-90, you see all the apartment buildings and that kind of thing that are happening out to the west. And so we did not, on the ground floor of Woodbridge and the other developments that are out on the west side of town, we did not approach developers or acquire a school site. And so now it's kind of a land scramble. And hopefully I will be hearing back from one of the developers next week with regard to whether or not there is a parcel that they would be interested in working with the school district in order for us to acquire a site on the west side. The reason that that's so important is because we shifted everybody when we opened Treaty Rock, and Treaty Rock is filling up fast. And so ultimately, if we could get something out there, we could kind of move the elementary boundaries back a little bit, which of course creates its own set of problems because parents want their kids in the school that they started in and those kinds of things. But I just thought you'd be interested to know. 2 of them told me, no, we don't have anything for you. But one person, and I wish I could remember his name right now because he's been extremely helpful, is going to get back with me in the next couple of weeks with regard to whether or not there's a parcel out there that will work for us. So I'm cautiously optimistic that maybe we could get something out there. If not, just a reminder, we do have 72 acres off of Chase and Bodine that if we had to, we could put a number of schools on that site. We do have the 64 acres off of Prairie and McGuire, and that is our slated second high school site. The issue with that site, of course, is that right now there is not sewer in that area. So, just kind of keeping you apprised of what's happening with regard to trying to acquire an additional site for us. We talked about purchasing vape detectors for all the secondary schools. Those vape detectors have been purchased, they have been installed, and they are functional at New Vision High School right now. They are not functional at the high school and the middle schools yet because they have to be able to identify which bathroom is which, and so we are very close to having all that ready to go. We did send out an email to parents in the principal sent out an email in their back to school newsletter alerting parents that we're gonna have vape detectors this year, and so that they were aware. And what I will say is Dawn's experience so far has been positive, and the whole idea is not to catch kids, is to try to stop this from happening in our schools and try to alert parents to what's going on with regard to this, what I will call an epidemic of kids vaping. So
Didn't we sign on to a class action?
We did.
And have gotten anything from that?
I got correspondence from the lawyer last week that $437 million settlement has happened initially for Juul Labs, the original. It doesn't include the second manufacturer of vape products. And they said they expect that it will, but that settlement is happening out of court, but they are going forward, and the first court hearing is supposed to happen at the beginning of November. So I would imagine that we will be hearing more. And of course, there are so many states involved in this class action lawsuit. It will be interesting to see when all is said and done, how much, if any, money would end up coming back to us. But it does appear, at least initially, that the company is obviously trying to avoid court and admitting some wrongdoing with regard to targeting teenagers and young kids with this stuff. So stay tuned as the high school and middle schools come online. Once we've identified the bathrooms, we're good to go, and I expect that'll happen next week. Enrollment. We heard at our pre-meeting about concerns about enrollment, and it's one of those things that we talked about last school year when we talked about whether or not we were gonna need to build a second high school. What I will say is, since COVID has happened, the things that we used to be able to count on with regard to our numbers and our projections for budgetary purposes for everything, they held true. I mean, we were golden for about 1.5% of growth each year. Since COVID has happened, all of the things that we used to be able to count on to project have not held true. And this year, we have not grown. We are actually down about 30 students. So the interesting part of that is the vast majority of those kids are missing from the secondary schools. Some of that equates to Elevate opening. We lost about 60 students to Elevate at the middle level, and of course some of those students were rolling up into the 9th grade, so I mean that would also affect the high school. But overall, the secondary schools were down about 100 students, and the elementary schools were up about 70. So we lost about 30 students. When we reached out and kind of where are they going, particularly the secondary kids, we've got kids still moving out of state, and I don't know if that's because families are able to sell their homes, or we're able to sell their homes, make some money and move somewhere else. I don't know. Some students have chosen to go online. We do still have some movement within our state, so they've moved out of Post Falls and went to Lewiston, or went to Boise, or went somewhere else. But it's interesting. Our enrollment's sitting right around 6,100 without preschool, our developmental preschool in the numbers. So I will keep you apprised. But that was one of the reasons that you heard from me last week. There's no need for us to meet, because from the very first day we could tell, we were gonna be flat, or, maybe up a tiny little bit, but it wouldn't be worth having a meeting and talking about the emergency of it. So
The good news is Katie budgets on a flat budget. So I said just budget for no growth, that way we're always safe. If we grow, it's fine, but if we, in this case, because we budgeted on a flat budget, we're in fairly good shape. But you'll probably see some attrition next year if our secondary numbers don't creep up, because our class sizes in secondary are gonna be lower than they have been, because we expected 130 more kids to be in our secondary schools and they're not. So, kind of an interesting little tidbit on that whole bit of business. And then we did send out a safety survey to both our staff and our parents, and unfortunately, only 18% of our parents responded. So it's, I feel like 18% isn't a very valid sample as far as what our parents want, because 18%, we're missing 82% of our folks. And unfortunately, the trends seem to follow our voting trends as well. We've been kind of hovering right around 18% of our families going out to vote. But what I would share with you is that overwhelmingly, it seems that both groups, both our staff and our parents, want us to have more SROs in our schools. I mean, if you look at the staff and the parent survey, it's crystal clear that we need more police officers in our schools. And so we've heard from the Post Falls Police that they are having difficulty staffing themselves. And what I would say is, we will continue to work with the police department, and if we cannot get an SRO in every building, then we will need to discuss with them what is Plan B. Because we need to do something, and we're very aware of that. What I would also share is how divisive the question of arming staff was, even for our parents. We had a number of parents say, yes, we want you to arm staff. That would have been their number one. And basically, on this, you all saw the survey, you could rank from 1 to 8 here. So we had that as one of the number one things, and then 100 more people ranked it dead last in our parent survey. And some commented, if you arm teachers, I'll be taking my child out of your schools. The difference between our staff survey and our parent survey was we actually asked staff, do you want to be armed? Do you want the responsibility of carrying a weapon on top of teaching? And 82% of them said no, we do not. And so I think really what we have here is a situation where we all know that student safety is our number one priority. And we've asked questions and we've received some response, not great response. We only had 51% of our staff respond, which also was similar to the first time when we started kind of looking at are people voting, who's voting. But I do think it gives us a little bit of a roadmap and a way forward to work with the police department. And then if the police department isn't able, like many other entities, us included, to find qualified people, at least it opens the dialogue of, okay, now what? What can we do next? One of the things that we have talked about is securing the vestibules in our more senior buildings. That ranked high on both the parent and the staff survey. Another thing that we haven't talked about at length is this idea of, right now what we have is called controlled access. We control who comes into the building by buzzing them in. Well, there's a way to access control, which means that everything is locked down automatically. The doors lock automatically, and each door leads to an outside has a sensor on it, and if it's open, the office is aware and can make sure that the door is closed. Of course, all that costs money, and it's technology and that kind of thing. But I do think the survey gave us a starting point, and we have hired security deans at the elementary level, and some people are, I think that's great. It's another opportunity for another adult to make relationships with kids. It's another opportunity for eyes on kids, and that's a huge safety thing, and that's one of the things that we have always done in the Post Falls School District, is eyes on kids, adults visible, good morning, how are you? All of that has been happening, and we had a lot of people acknowledge that that is a deterrent. So I think this extra adult is another opportunity, and because they're an employee of our school district, it also enables them to pay attention to the cameras, because we can't have, volunteers watching our cameras, that's a violation of FERPA. And so this enables the elementary schools to have a little more focus on what's going on those cameras during the day as well. So I'm happy to share all the results with you. If you'd like them, just let me know and I'll shoot you a copy of it. You can read all the responses and everything. And so that's where we're at right now. And I think that is all from me.